Every culture has that negative side, but every culture has the positive side. Every culture has excellence, and we have it as well. We have a real voice and a real say in everything, I believe, that goes on in the world. And so that is what I think traditional outlets don't focus on. And I'm not going to say they don't focus on it because they don't want to report it. But again, it goes back to, if you don't wake up and live in the black culture every day, you can't expect them to know what's really going on. So it's up to us who wake up and leave. It's up to us to know people like yourself that are doing what you're doing, for us to promote that, for us to talk about that. And then when we promote it as a culture and start to get it out more and more on our behalf, then other people will have to pay attention to it because they're seeing it more and more.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Media is very powerful, and it plays a significant role in how Black people are perceived. Research has shown that the media often negatively represents Black people, particularly in news coverage and TV shows, further contributing to harmful stereotypes against Black people. The reality is that there are so many inspiring stories of hard work and excellence in the Black community, yet these stories are hardly told. This is why we need more Black voices in the media so our authentic experiences and perspectives can be shared. Our stories are unique and no one can tell them like us. So today we've invited James DuBose to unpack the importance of centering Black voices and creating unfiltered content. James is the general manager at Fox Soul, the Black community's premier free streaming platform. And during our conversation, we're covering the impact of media on the Black community, why Black voices are needed in the media, and some of the challenges facing Black media in terms of growth. Let's get into it. James, welcome to the Black to Business Podcast. Excited to have you here, so welcome to the show.
Great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes. So today we're diving into some juicy topics, but before we get there, I'd like to introduce you to my audience. So if you could just share a little bit about your story. I know we're going to dive into it further, but just briefly share your story. How did you get where you are today, and what is it that you do in your business?
Okay. My name is James DuBose, and I'm the general manager of Fox Soul. Mainly, I started off under DuBose Entertainment, my own banner, doing mainly reality shows. Keyshia Cole was my first reality show, and we spun off from that for a few years. And then from there, I did Tiny and Toya Family Affair, the Michael Vick Project, My Moment with Trey Songz, Hell Date, bunch comedy shows and so forth. And so that was just my foray, and then got into live sports and music and so forth. And then in 2019, when Fox approached me about the idea of starting their first over-the-top streaming network for Fox Soul, targeted for the African-American community, they wanted to get my thoughts, and then I started pitching that and how it should be done and what we thought would be. And so today, I oversee the network from programming to business to sponsorships and so forth with a great team. And so I've transitioned, if you will, from the producer to the network side. But I still am a producer at heart, but I'm learning to be both the network executive and a producer.
Love it. And thank you for sharing that. So now you were previously in the NFL playing for the Detroit Lions. I want to talk about your career transition from football to executive producing.
Yeah, so I had a brief... I graduated from Wake Forest University, where I played football there, and then I was picked up as a free agent by Detroit Lions. And I had an injury, so that career was cut extremely short, really fast. And quite honestly, I was like extremely depressed for, I think, about 6 months. I went back to North Carolina, where I'm from, Greensboro, and it took me a long time to transition because you work so hard for something. All your life. As a little kid, you dream of being a professional athlete if you're into sports. And then to get that close and to actually have it happen and then be taken away from you was tough for me at that time. And that pain and that feeling of failure, if you will, sort of drove me to a lot of different things. So, but I have my degree in broadcast communication, and I eventually bought a one-way ticket and flew out to Los Angeles. Stayed in a hotel, met some great people, and I started working as a production assistant, going to get coffee and donuts and so forth with a company called Brad Lockman Productions, who became my mentor and really taught me a lot and so forth. And from there, I really just wanted to eventually be on my own. I knew I wanted to, not just because of vanity reasons, but I'm an entrepreneur at spirit, but at the same time, I had a vision of what I wanted to do in the business, and that was to do black culture in a way that I felt that would entertain, educate, and inspire. And so that has been sort of since then my mission and what I've been sort of working towards.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that you followed that passion, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, which is the importance of centering Black voices and creating unfiltered content. So I want to dive a little further into the inspiration behind Fox Soul, and like you mentioned before, your passion of focusing on specifically the Black community. Now, you mentioned that Fox approached you. So coupled with the fact that you had this passion for speaking about the Black community and making sure you're educating and inspiring, like talk about that process of getting them on board, or were they fully for it, supporting that pro-Black media?
Right. So prior to coming, having a conversation with me back in March of 19, they were thinking about what culture to do. They did some focus groups and so forth. And traditionally in the past, Fox already had some fabric, if you will, in the Black community with shows like Living Single and Martin and things of that nature. And I felt like they forgot about us at some point, right? So when they approached me about it and we started having these conversations, the first thing I wanted to make sure was that they wanted to do it authentically, and they were going to allow our voices to be heard and not have quote unquote a Black face in front of this thing where people that are not of the culture pulling the strings behind the scenes. I really had no interest in that. And then we also had to obviously address the elephant in the room, which was Fox News. Which was, how's Fox going to start a Black network, if you will, and they do Fox News, which is what the Black community sort of know them for at this moment.
Yeah.
And so when we started having those conversations and they assured me, Jack Abernathy and Stephen Brown assured me that wasn't the case. They wanted it to be authentic. And the quote was, "We're going to give you a runway and get out your way." And they've been true to their word. Now, it's a difficult process starting a network. It's not like it was already up and running and I'm just coming in to sort of oversee it and hopefully take it to another level. This was literally starting a network from a piece of paper. And so the goal was, and I felt like, listen, BET is a household name in the Black community. We're not going to compete with that out the gate. Then obviously you had Revolt with Puff and what he had already started to do. And then TV One, what was going to be the difference? How was I going to find a place for Fox Soul that the community would pay attention to? And to me, it was the one thing I felt like we were lacking, is to have a place where we could really speak our minds and our truth unapologetically without it being watered down. And so that was the mission, is to give us a voice. Finally give us a voice that you would never hear on traditional outlets. And Fox Soul wanted to be that place.
Love it. And what did that look like? Like you said, like being unapologetic, being unfiltered. Like, what did it look like? And what are some of the things that you all did differently in that way?
Well, if you notice, most of our content to date has been talk format, right? And what I said is I wanted to have our voice, our truth. But what that meant was having a safe place to talk about things that we normally only discuss in the privacy of our own homes.
Yes.
We were afraid to talk about, let's say, mental health or poverty or whatever the case may be, single parent, whatever the case may be, or how the injustice of America towards the Black community and Black people as a whole, our brothers and sisters out there trying hard, but everything seems to be a lot difficult for us to do. And when you hear us talking about that on traditional outlets, we always can't say everything we really wanted to say, And what that looked like, well, I wanted to touch every emotion that I felt like we had. I wanted to be happy, sad, smile, laugh. But most importantly, I wanted to have a perspective that you could really hear and appreciate inside the culture and outside the culture. So, for instance, Cocktails with the Queens, with Vivica, Claudia, Lisa Ray, Selena. Those were queens and women being able to show another side of them. And do it without being judged. And then you had the Book of Sean, which was our inspirational show. And then The Business of Being Black with Tammy Mack. What does it feel like to walk outside your door every day as a black man or a woman? And let's speak about that in truth. And then obviously we have T, because we have to entertain and so forth. So I wanted to show the totality of the black community, if you will, and not just the portions they chose for us to be able to show on TV.
Yes. Love that. Love the backstory. Love that, putting that into perspective. And of course, answering probably those questions that my listeners might have, like, this is where Fox News is, and bringing that up and just putting that on the table. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about the impact of media and the importance of centering Black voices. So when it comes to the impact of media, whether it's written, print, video, or social media, and its impact on the Black community, can you touch on the power of the social and political impact that it has, and even the influence of our community?
I mean, it's extremely powerful, especially if you're, and I say this respectfully, but especially if you are speaking to people who don't want to research or read or think for themselves. Right?
Yeah.
So if you just listen to what they tell you, or what the traditional outlets tell you, or what anyone tells you for that matter, black, white, or otherwise, you start to live a life that you're not really sure is authentic to who you are and what you really know. And the media is extremely powerful in promoting what they want to promote for various reasons. And at the end of the day, it always comes down to commerce. It always comes down to dollars, right? Social media now is how most people get their news or get their information. But what it has done, in my opinion, is has stopped people from studying, from reading, from researching, from figuring out themselves and thinking for themselves. And I think that is the power that media has. But where it should be is giving you an opportunity to say, I never thought about that, or is that true? And ask the question, why? And hopefully what I think is what I would love for Fox Soul in essence, and black media in general, is to just be able to have people think about the why. And I say this to say I felt like I would hope that we could do with Fox Soul what hip-hop did for the music industry. Remember, when that came out, they thought it wasn't going to last. It was only coming from the hood, and it was going to go away. But now, everybody, all cultures appreciate hip-hop, and actually, cultures that are not of the black community probably consume and buy more hip-hop than we do as a culture. But it speaks to the power of our stories. It speaks to the power of our voices when we tell it authentically and from our own perspectives and our own POV. And so I think black media, once we are able to do that, it doesn't necessarily have to be a separation, white media, black media, and so forth. It just becomes a respect factor and a factor where people actually respect your culture because they're starting to understand it and hear it in an authentic way. But you cannot expect people who don't know your culture or respect your culture to help you enhance your culture.
Well said. Well said. You know, I think about what you said earlier in terms of looking at, you know, how we're portrayed in media, not only the bad, but the good. And I want to ask your perspective on the need to overcome the default, like, black trauma story theme that has made its way into a lot of the black-centric media we interact with. Like, what's your perspective on that?
Well, again, they feed you. We always have a battle, and we all have learned this is the fact. We have the good and the bad, and people ask what's going to win, and it's the one you feed the most, right? It's the one you actually feed, and we feed the negative so much. I hate when they say minorities, or we're doing this for black people, or we're doing this for the culture, because it keeps you mentally thinking. It's psychologically debilitating that we're less than. Right? So we created a show, our daily news show called The Black Report, which if you really watch that, yes, we tell the news that affect our community. And it's not just doom and gloom. It's not we're going to jail, we're selling drugs, we're shooting
Right.
each other and so forth. We also represent Black excellence. We also do the HBCUs. We also have a real balance so that you don't walk away angry and mad and sad and feeling less than. You realize we are powerful people. There's powerful things that's going on. So I try to, or we collectively, are really trying to show the totality, as I mentioned before, because there's so many sides of us. We have that side, of course, but who doesn't? Every culture has that negative side, but every culture has the positive side. Every culture has excellence, and we have it as well. We have a real voice and a real say in everything, I believe, that goes on in the world. And so that is what I think traditional outlets don't focus on. And I'm not going to say they don't focus on it because they don't want to report it. But again, it goes back to if you don't wake up and live in the Black culture every day, you can't expect them to know what's really going on. So it's up to us who wake up and leave. It's up to us to know people like yourself that are doing what you're doing, for us to promote that, for us to talk about that. And then when we promote it as a culture and start to get it out more and more on our behalf, then other people will have to pay attention to it because they're seeing it more and more.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. So, James, can you talk about how the representation, in your opinion, how today looks different from in the past when it comes to the representation of Black media outlets or just Black people in media? Do you see any growth?
I'm not going to say I see growth, to be honest with you. What I see is a lot of smoke and mirrors, if I'm being honest. I see that
we like honesty.
With all the things that are going on in the world, you have these corporations, you have these other outlets that are saying we're going to do more for the Black community. We're going to give this a dollar amount to the Black community. We have these DEI campaigns and so forth, right? But if you look back and you look over the year when they said this back in 2020, back in 2021, and way before then, what has really changed? We still got BT. Now we have Revolt. You got a lot of the streaming places going on, but is Hollywood really changed in terms of our culture? Has news outlets really changed in terms of our culture? I mean, unfortunately, the Black news channel is no longer around, right? Are we really seeing Black faces of Black men and women at tables? Not just at a seat at the table, but at the table where they don't have to go and ask, mother, may I, father, may I. You can make a decision. You have the money and the budget they give you and to go run it. I don't see many people doing that. What I see is a lot of DEI people, we're doing the diversity thing and so forth. But that doesn't change. Not a lot of us at the top of these corporations look like us. And it goes back to, again, if you're the CEO of a company or you're the president of a company or media outlet, and you don't wake up and live this culture, you don't think about Black people, or you don't think about how should I have a diverse office and things of that nature. You go to what you're familiar with, and I don't see that changing as much. I don't see that has changed as much, to be honest with you.
So, and what do you think when it comes to the Black media outlets specifically? What are some of the challenges that they are facing when it comes to the growth and support that's needed?
Dollars. It's the bottom line. If for us, for instance, Fox Soul, we're constantly fighting, trying to get the brands, the McDonald's, the Fords, the General Motors, Targets, anybody to spend money in the Black media outlets. Not just in the traditional outlets, because at the end of the day, without the budgets, without the money, you can't do all the programming that we want to do. You can't sustain. And you're seeing right now, we're having a lot of, from Paramount Plus to Disney and so forth, they're doing layoffs. They're doing a lot of cutbacks because the sponsorship dollars are just not coming in, or the ad revenue is just not coming in. So if they're having cutbacks, imagine what Black media is feeling right now, because you're not really, you're spending maybe 2% at best, of your ad dollars on black media. And that is always, until that changes, because that's where everything comes from, commercials and so forth, there's always going to be a discrepancy and an issue with us in that regard. So I think that is the real issue, and that's what we're trying to fight and change on a day-to-day basis.
And knowing that is the issue, like for just the insider of some of the things you all are doing at Fox Soul, like how are you all having to be resourceful to, combat these challenges that you all may be facing?
Unfortunately, and that's thanks for asking that question. And people don't realize I get calls and from agents and from people that I know they want to do scripted shows. They have all these great ideas, and I love them, and I wish I could do everything, but the economics don't make sense. And I'll just say this: Quibi, if you remember, had $1 billion. They were gone in 6 months. The Black News Channel had 100 million plus. They're no longer around. I'm not saying anything bad about that. I'm saying economics, the business model, is extremely important. So unfortunately, with the resources that we have currently, until we can get these sponsorship dollars and ad dollars in, I can only do so much programming. I can only hire so many people. I can only pay a certain amount of dollars for programming and staff and so forth. That's the effect of it. That's really the effect of it. And so we're just having to be smart business wise, economic wise. And a lot of times people don't understand that if you're not having to live it every day. But if I go out and spend $50 million and I got 1 million coming in, eventually nobody's going to be employed.
Right.
Because the math doesn't make sense. It is not going to add up.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you said that, like, the business model is so important, because I think that so many people can get like sidetracked or distracted by, the exposure and all of those things. But if that back end isn't right, it's only going to last for so long. So
absolutely.
So we've discussed the importance of centering Black voices. I want to talk about creating the unfiltered content. So for you and some of the things that you're doing at Fox Soul, let's talk about the importance of creating that unfiltered content and what are the benefits that you've seen or that you know to be true.
Well, first of all, when you create the unfiltered content, it gives us as a people the freedom to speak our truth. And at the end of the day, we all have a story and we all have a voice. It's just that our stories and our voices have been muted for so long. And so it's easy for me when I don't have the money per se to pay great talent like these other places may have. My selling point is you always said you wanted to say this in your way, in your own voice. This is the only place you could do that. And so I've gotten a lot of people, from Jeezy to Angela Yee to Vivica Fox to Lisa Ray. You can go down the list of everyone that's been a part of helping Fox Soul where it is today. It's because they felt the freedom, finally, of being able to speak how they want to speak. So that's that part. And then the second part of that is, if you're not of the culture and you don't really know our culture, what better way to learn it than through truth, than through how we feel, than our perspectives and so forth. And again, it's like we get to take people on a safari. You can get on the bus, but you don't have to worry about being bitten by the animals that are in in the jungle. We're taking all those bites, and that's fine to get to where we need to be. But again, that's what we have to do to I think, to have people really start to really understand and respect our emotions and how we feel, and all these outrage that we have to hold in from everything that has happened to us or what they're reporting to happen to us as the world. And goes back to your last question. That's why we try to offset that as best we can by speaking of the positivity and the things that we're also doing in the community that no one else wants to talk about.
Yeah. And I'd imagine, doing that, there are some things, of course, you're pushing the envelope. And how are you all dealing with cancel culture? Or what would you say to someone, recommendation of dealing with cancel culture or some of the backlash that they may face?
Well, to be honest, I still don't understand what cancel culture really is.
You know how sometimes they're like, they can ruin your whole business, but I guess it makes sense because you're like, the business model is solid. So, if you say something that's wrong or a group of people don't agree with, there's your whole business for some people.
Listen, I got it's four of us in my household, and we don't. It's rarely ever we agree on a daily basis. So you're always going to find people that disagree with what you have to say. But I believe, listen, if it's meant to be, honestly, in the council, and this is a world again. It goes back to everyone has an opinion. Social media is giving everyone an ability to have a voice, but my faith comes into that. As long as I'm speaking and living my truth and my purpose, you can't cancel me unless God says it's time.
Okay, that's a bar right there. Can't cancel me unless God says it's time. I love it. So, James, earlier you spoke about your experience prior to Fox Soul working with some hit TV series like E! Network's Wags Atlanta and Kevin Hart's One Mic Stand and Tiny and Toya and Keyshia Cole's The Way It Is and more. Can you share your experience on working on these projects, being that they are both, or a majority of them are centered around Black individuals who are living what many would consider unfiltered lives?
Yeah, I mean, again, those are blessings, and to be able to work with such talented people and good people, and I think my most encouraging or happiest part of all of that is that I still have genuine relationships with the majority of those people that I've worked with, and to that point, for the most part, everyone that I've worked with, when we started working together, they were at a crossroads in their lives. You know, Toya was known as, at that moment, Lil Wayne's ex-wife, right? Tiny was known as T.I.'s wife, who was doing Escape. Michael Vick, for instance, was just getting out of prison. Everyone was in a crossroads, and the fact that they trusted me enough to tell the truth of their life, going back to entertain, educate, and inspire, like, you just don't want to be a celebrity. You want people to enjoy your brand and appreciate your brand even when the cameras go off, and they will, and that's because you were authentic and truth, which most of us can identify with. And now that you see Toya, who I love still, my sister to this day, she's now Toya. She has her own brand. She's doing her own thing. She's built upon that. Tiny is doing everything she's doing. Everybody, Michael Vick is back on TV. I'm not saying it's because of what we did. I'm just saying I know we had a small part in letting them tell their truth to the people, which was appreciated.
Yes, I love it. And what advice would you give to someone who is interested in going into this media space, and just some of the first steps that they could take to get started, whether it's brainstorming what their brand is going to be about and setting themselves apart, or some of the key people that they need to connect with?
Is two things, and it's going to sound simple, and I don't mean it to be, but it's just the fact of the matter is, first of all, build genuine relationships. Life is about relationships. It's really who you know, right? And then when you do get an opportunity to get in the door, understand you're not just representing yourself, you're representing the people that have helped you get there. And so you should always do your very best. Be authentic, have a vision. Don't waver, have a real vision, and simply don't give up. Be prepared. I always say the first business you ever going to have to run is the business of you Incorporated. And I've experienced the good and bad of that. And so make sure you can look in the mirror every day, love on yourself. Make sure you say, I love myself, because when the no's come and the negativity come and all the things that life will bring you, and especially in this entertainment business, if you're not solid with yourself, you will waver and keep going backwards and starting over. And as the saying goes, if you want to stop having to start over, then stop quitting.
That's good. Oh, I like that. I haven't heard that, but I love it. And so, James, any tips for how we as a community can support Black voices and content? So maybe for people who might not necessarily be writers and producers, but just supporting the content and the platforms that are out there.
Yes, uplift each other. Promote on your social media the positivity. Like, we'll retweet and repost all the negative stuff. Somebody's doing this. If you go on right now, we wake up every day for the most part looking for something negative to talk about, right? Instead of the positive. And a lot of that is because it makes us forget the fight we got within ourselves every day a little bit, you know? Someone told me the other day, which I think is great. everybody's a saint when they're talking about the sins of someone else.
Mm.
Right, right. So,
So
so,
good.
so, I would just say promote
Mm-hmm.
promote us in an authentic way, promote all of us, promote the excellence that we have, and support the people that are really trying. Like, let's be honest, I'm not a celebrity, I have no way, shape, or form. I'm not ever in the same boat in terms of celebrity factor as the Puffs or the Jay-Z's or all these people that you see every day. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm working just as hard for the culture at a place, Fox, that most of the black community, because of Fox News, if you will, don't see. And I need
Mm-hmm.
help from the community as well to really speak about that, just to let them
Mm-hmm.
know that someone like myself, and not just me, everybody on the team is working really hard. But I have to fight every day just to get a little promotion, because I'm not the celebrity factor. I'm not. If you say James DuBose, you're not going to be considered the cool kid, right? As you would if you know Jay or
Oh, that's
Puff or anyone,
cool.
or anyone like that. So I would just say promote everything, man. Promote us, look for us, wake up and find us, the positivity, and then promote that as well.
I love it. And speaking of help, and let's talk about further some of the problems that you all are solving at Foxhole and making sure that the culture is heard. So, in supporting you, if you could discuss some of your offerings for people who are probably new to the platform and some of your content and processes so that they can support.
Yes, we're on 20 distribution platforms now. Samsung TV Plus. We obviously have Foxhole.tv. We have our app. You can go to the App Store and do Foxhole. We're on Roku, Tubi, YouTube TV Plus, Vizio, so forth. And then starting in January, we just did a deal where we'll be on Direct TV streaming, which is
Oh, nice.
60% of the Direct TV customer base. So just look up the name Foxhole, and normally wherever you have in your household that you consume your content, hopefully you can find us there. Tubi, Fox Now, and the growth hopefully will continue. But I'll just say it's a difficult challenge. It's not probably, it is the most difficult thing I've ever done in my career in trying to build
Mm.
this network. So I need everyone's support and help. We as a network need everyone's help and support as much as possible.
Yes, and we are definitely going to make sure that people do that by putting those resources in the show notes and just spreading the word. But as you mentioned, this is, one of the most difficult things that you've done. Let's talk about how you function as a leader, some of the ways that you stay grounded. How do you practice like self-care?
Uh, I don't know if we have that long to talk, but listen, I've been through like the mental stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not to get too deep, I've had my difficulties with that, and at the height of what most people could say my success, I was at my lowest,
Mm-hmm.
from a spiritual and mental standpoint. And so, and that's just, I work on myself every day. I have learned to love myself with $1 or with $1,000,000, just the same. So I practice that every day, the meditation and so forth. But most importantly, I look in the mirror and just tell myself I love myself. And it may sound simple and plain, but I'm telling you, it's one of the most powerful things that I personally could work on every day. And I do that literally every single day. In terms of being a leader, the most part is being smart enough to know your strengths and your weaknesses. So I work my strengths and I bring on and partner with my weaknesses. I know what I'm good at, and I'm also honest with myself and know what I'm not good at. So I hire great
Mm-hmm.
people that are much smarter than me, which is not hard to do, and then get the hell out of their way. That's what
That's
I do.
real. That's so real. And any of your favorite tools or resources for business that you've used in this journey that could be helpful to my listeners, please do share those.
Read. I mean, there's a great book called Principles by Ray Diallo, which is really great. It's a tough read, but it's great. But again, nothing you read or do matters if you really don't
Mm,
have self-love. And so there's a book I'm reading now. This is my second time reading it in the last month. It's called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depended on It. And it was a Silicon Valley CEO who lost his business, lost everything, lost his relationship, was completely down. And he really used these tools and taught people how to use these tools to love themselves. And so I'm just going to always be an advocate of, first and foremost, love you. And when you truly love you, it's amazing how life, it just brings that back to you. And you don't really have to try as hard. So I'm going to say the tools that you should use first is anything that teaches you and gives you practices that you have to work on to love yourself every day. The rest of it will take care of itself. You can say, I want to make $1 billion, or I want to have a great movie, or I want to be a director. You can do all of that. Mm-hmm. But if you don't want to love you, it's going to be very difficult. And even if you get it, most of us, and I'm going to say, we hear all kind of stories of athletes and especially in our culture and entertainers that we've made all this money and we've lost all this money. And the reason we lose it, it's not like we're not smart. We don't know that if you spend more than you make, and eventually you're going to go broke. It is the fact that we have depended on everything else to identify, to validate us, instead of learning to love ourselves and validate ourselves. And if we did that, we wouldn't make decisions that we've made. Every decision that I've made that's been bad is from a lack of love. I know that now. A lack of self-love. And so I just tell anyone, learn self-love, because it will help your decision making. You won't make certain decisions. If you're in a relationship, you ain't going to bounce around if you truly love yourself, because not everyone deserves you. But if you don't value yourself, you ain't going to value nothing else. So we make decisions out of lack of self-love, and that destroys more businesses than anything else in the world for our community.
That's so good and so beautifully said. I loved it. And James, speaking of love, I think loving yourself is a part of also betting on yourself. So what's the best risk that you've taken?
The best risk that I've taken is just going for my vision, believing in that. And it's not even a risk, honestly. So what else you going to do? You're going to go work 9 to 5 every day for something that you hate? You're going to live to die? So it ain't really a risk. So I try to leave those words out, honestly. The risk is not doing what you want to do. That's the risk. Because then you become miserable every day, because you know you're not living your purpose. You know you're not living your truth. And so good. The risk is not doing.
The risk is not doing. And finally, what does it mean to you to be Black in business?
Man, wow. Monique, that was good.
Thank you.
What does it mean to me, Black in business? I guess the word that keeps coming to my mind really right now is responsibility. So much bigger than me. Because right now, if I die tomorrow, God forbid, everything I've done is going to die with me. And until I can leave something that when I'm dead and gone, it's going to help others in the culture continue moving forward, then at the end of the day, I really haven't done anything that I want to do.
That's powerful. Got to keep living. James, this has been so amazing. And I thank you so much for pouring into my audience and doing the work that you're doing. I know it's not easy, but it's so appreciated. And I'm pretty sure people who are listening are going to want to know, how can they connect with you, find you, and support you? So please do share.
I'm not on social media except LinkedIn. I was on IG, but I got off that. That was disturbing my peace.
Yeah, I feel you.
I don't allow nothing to disturb my peace. But you can contact me on LinkedIn, James DuBose, and then send me a message. And I do try to respond to everybody, honestly and openly, either I'm interested or not, in terms of what you're having. But that's where you can connect me from a business standpoint.
Got it. And we'll put that in the show notes. James, this has been beautiful. Thank you again for being on the Black to Business podcast.
Thank you for having me, and God bless you, and continued success to you as well.
What a wonderful discussion. So many things stood out for me during this conversation. It's important to allow our voices to be heard and not just be a Black face. And I also like that James shared how we can support each other simply by uplifting one another. Check out more info about James and how you can support Fox Soul by visiting blacktobusiness.com/127. Chat with you next week, same time, same place.